we just start over. People still are joining in, but as we plan to start the session already 4 minutes ago, we should not wait that much longer. And hence, I would like to introduce our four speakers or people here being ready to answer your questions for the panel discussion about AEM as a cloud service. So we've got Carsten and Konrad who already introduced themselves with their talks today prior to that panel discussion. And we also have Ian Boston and Alexander Saar. Ian is a principal scientist, and I think you're joining from the UK, if I remember correctly.
That's correct. UK, Cambridge.
Nice city. I've been living in London for a while, so I've been visiting Cambridge. Nice city. Alexander Saar as head of development for cloud service for the AEM as a cloud service is already with us. So they are here to answer your questions about AEM as a cloud service, and we would be happy to receive your questions. So please go to the Q&A section and give us some update or give us your questions about what you would like to hear or about AEM as a cloud service. So already now we've got 40 people been joining in. So whenever you have got questions, please make them available inside the Q&A section, not within the chat. So yeah,
probably. While we wait for the first questions, not that it gets too boring. Oh, the first are coming in already, but
but if you have anyone, yeah, just continue probably as you had an idea of what you would love to tell.
Yeah. Why don't we just get started and then we switch to the questions in a little bit? So, Konrad, since you are the non-Adobe panel speaker here, what's your take on also from your partner perspective on the last year of the AEM cloud service? What was like the biggest thing that changed for you?
The biggest improvements were definitely in the area of development tools. So AEM Analyzer, Maven plugin is definitely crucial, I would say, and will become even more crucial in the future. What you have seen in the last year was that you haven't really updated API at all, or only very few areas have been touched, actually. I guess that will change a little bit in the future. So it's great to have some tooling around that, to be able to actually run that locally, even earlier than only in the Cloud Manager, because this usually takes some time. On the other hand, I'm still kind of missing more transparency on what does actually happen if an AEM update does fail. Dominic elaborated a bit on that already, that you're constantly monitoring which customers are using which API, which is great, but I'm not 100% sure on what kind of steps are actually taken by Adobe support. How do you reach out to the customer to be able to actually get rid of some API? Because what I've also seen in the past is that there were some AEM API deprecated, and the date was shifted over and over again. And the more often you do that, the harder it is for me to argue in front of the customer, this is something we have to tackle right now. Because if you know, okay, if we don't do anything, then we'll just stick with the old version and we are totally fine with that. And then this is probably not going to work. So I'm really interested in seeing this in reality, really, in the future.
Great. So probably we start with our first questions over here. So from Gary, we got the questions. What are your experiences with user management in Cloud Manager, especially when synchronizing with an existing Active Directory?
I mean, I can probably talk to this a little bit. As you know, AEM Cloud Service for the authoring instances integrates heavily with IMS, And if you're using IMS, then what we call a type 3 IMS integration allows you to integrate with Active Directory so that all your users are synchronized in there. If you're talking about synchronizing in the publisher instances with some external source, then all the normal rules apply in terms of what you can integrate with in your own code, although there may be some work required to ensure that you have network connectivity to that directory, because of course most directories don't operate over HTTPS, and our standard egress out of the clusters is on HTTPS. We like everything to be encrypted in transport and secure, with transport level security flowing throughout the cloud infrastructure.
Thank you, Ian. Anyone else want to comment on that? Otherwise, I will close that question. Okay. Then we have got a question which Stefan raised in here, but could have been from my side as well, from the Adobe perspective, from the Eon perspective. Will be there support for automatic content backflow between environments, from e.g. from productive to stage? Is it cumbersome to doing it with content packages? Anyone wants to take over that question?
I can talk to that again if either Carsten or Alex want to. Yes,
feel free.
Okay, so yes, it is. We want to make this a lot easier than it is currently. It is cumbersome using content packages. As you all know, if you've used content packages and looked at the way the quick start AEM behaves with the package manager, you'll look at the local disk and you'll look at what goes on transferring the packages, and a lot of I/O goes on. And what we want to do in cloud service is make that super fast, make it use the cloud native infrastructure, so that rather than having to transfer packages backwards and forwards and unpack on local disk and all those sort of things, we want to make that super fast. But we're not there yet. There are some challenges to overcome operating in the cloud, especially when you've got instances that self-heal, that automatically restart, and all those sort of things. And yeah, we want to make it better than it is now, and much easier and much faster than it is now. And we have those things planned, but I can't say when, because I'm not the product manager.
Anyone else wants to add something to it? No. Okay. Then we mark this answer as well. When will Java 17 be supported for AEM as a cloud service and AEM 6.5?
Okay, I can probably comment on that one. So first of all, we can't probably specify a date by when it will happen, but eventually we will support it. The problem with Java 11, or first of all, with Java 17, not 11, with Java 17 is that you get new features, and I guess developers want to use them as soon as possible. But on the other end, it comes with more restrictions than Java 11, which we today support, right? Especially around reflection. There are some changes since Java 16. There are some APIs removed in the JDK. And we have to figure out, first of all, we have to see that AEM perfectly runs on Java 17. As you probably have heard today in the intro by Robert, that we managed to get Sling running on Java 17. Now we have to do the same for the larger AEM. And then we also have to see that all customers run perfectly on that one, right? Again, due to the restrictions that are put in, and Java 17 not being fully compatible to Java 11, it's not a simple yes and no answer, right? You basically, in the end, have to run the code to see what happens. So this will take some time, and eventually we'll get there. It also, on the other end, supporting it out of the from the start, from today, for example, doesn't make that much sense because it hasn't been picked up by developers yet. So we will also watch how fast it will be picked up by developers, and then see how we can combine those two things.
Okay. Anyone else wants to add something? I guess not really.
I think Carsten is the expert on
Yeah.
this area, so we're going to defer to him.
Definitely. Mark answered. So again, from Stefan, the biggest improvement over the last years from the infrastructure behind AEM as a cloud service, e.g. the CDN, what is the biggest improvement from your perspective?
I think if I may start, I would have a hard time, and sorry, I think I got kicked out in the meantime. I would have a hard time picking one particular thing that has a big improvement. The whole service has grown massively to thousands of topologies that it operates today. And across all angles, scalability, stability, performance has improved by orders of magnitude throughout this journey. So I think for me personally, the holistic capabilities of the service is what a year after or a year and a half after its general ability, how far we have come based on real production experience and running all the code that you implement on your own behalf or on behalf of your customers at scale. That is something that's just wonderful to see play out in reality. And in order to do that, we had to touch and improve every single aspect of the system, from CDN to the underlying platform on which we run AEM and many other services that are part of this ecosystem. AEM in itself, we put a lot of work in improving various functions from indexing to startup times and the like, just to increase stability, increase performance, increase scalability alongside with significantly growing demand and adoption. Ian, Carsten, what's your favorite?
Well, I think everyone should know that we all do on-call sessions for a week, and if I look back over the past year, the on-call sessions a year ago were at times dealing with quite a lot of issues. I did one 2 weeks ago, and it was very quiet, and we're running a lot more services, a lot more customers on top of that. So I think one of the areas where we've improved significantly is in the ability of the system to self-heal and the ability of the system to handle much more live traffic. And then if I look back to some of the launches we've done, the go live launches, ones we've even known about or ones where the customer who's using AEM Cloud Service hasn't even come to us. The smoothness, which is, that's not a very good word, but the smoothness in which they go live has improved dramatically. We've got a lot better at understanding the traffic patterns. We've got a lot better at detecting just simple things like when a customer is doing a distributed penetration test before they go live, or a distributed load test. We can spot the patterns that are coming in and either know that they are those sort of patterns or know which areas of the infrastructure they're putting load on. So we've learned a lot from that information, from all that information that we've got flowing through the system into the on-call environment. That's one area, I think, and we've improved, and we've gone live to some fairly big sites over the past year.
Maybe I can also comment on that from a more of an outside perspective. So what has improved definitely a lot over the last year is the logging capabilities, in general, the transparency that you get as an implementation partner of what potentially went wrong, because in the beginning we often had very cryptic error messages, which didn't really allow us to understand what was really going wrong under the hood. So that from my perspective improved a lot. And then the whole area of managing domains and managing certificates, that was totally manual in the beginning, and that can be nicely automated right now, and you have the full visibility in the Cloud Manager. So these were really great improvements.
Yeah, so my answer goes a little bit into the same direction as Alex said in the beginning. I think we've been doing a lot of, let's say, smaller things here and there, and if you combine them together, they basically create a better experience for our users, right? So that's why for me there's no single thing that stands out for me. It's the combination of all the things we do to improve the service over time. Just a generic answer is the last one in the round.
Thanks.
But the last one from Konrad was not generic at all. So I really appreciate that specific perspective. But yeah, I think from the engineering side, as we look at all these various layers of this, I mean, before we had AEM, right? We gave you AEM as a download, and you guys build all these awesome systems with it. Now we are doing part of that, and we had to learn a lot about this as well, and seeing every day how from the edge all the way to the underlying runtime, things scale up and down in tandem and coordination with the usage. And it's really hard to remember all the different things just in the last 2 months that we did to make sure all of that plays well together. So that's why it's so hard to pick one individual thing out of it.
I think one of the big things we've done is we've done a lot of releases. I mean, if we go back to before we started this journey, we did a lot of internal builds, but we only did one release a year when it was pre-AEM Cloud Service. And now how often are we doing them, Alex?
Guys, there are a lot of other questions coming in, so
yeah,
we probably should
on.
continue with those ones and not just stay on a single question.
Sure.
So I mark that answered, and probably jump off to we've experienced some breaking changes on the AEM 6.5 service packs. Is the focus on AEM as a cloud service that these breaking changes appear in 6.5? What about the support? How long will it go on? A lot of customers are still on-prem, yeah, so I think that's kind of a good typical question from an
okay, yeah, I think there's a lot of, or there's multiple questions in here, so I can go first. Well, obviously there is not, and there should be no expectation that things are breaking on the cloud service. Like Ian said, we are releasing very often. So if you have engaged with the cloud service, what's most transparent probably to most folks is our monthly releases. Internally, we are deploying much more often, on average once a week throughout the last year. So that has, I think, two major implications. Going back and forth is much more quicker because everything is automated. When we roll something out and we detect something, we can directly engage immediately, but also we can roll it back quite efficiently and quickly. And the second important dimension here is that the change set is just much smaller. So if you think about the 6.5 world, it's like 300 plus engineers coding away for a year. You can do the math eventually how many pull requests that are per year that go into this one big major version increment. Even for service packs, it's not that much, but it's still a lot. And then all of that has to be validated throughout the different combinations. This has entirely changed for us. Like I said, we deploy once per week on average. A much smaller change set. The whole pipeline is automated end to end, so everything is rolled out from PR until it's live with customers in production in an automatic fashion, with a whole lot of testing and automatic feedback cycles in between. If you haven't seen it yet, so we're starting obviously with module level integration tests and unit tests, going into assembling the whole system, a vanilla system, on the actual runtime. So that's the actual AEM. But then the next level is also the whole topology, so to speak, with all the adjacent servers, including CDN and whatnot. And at each stage, we kind of run our whole battery of tests against that, which also has improved on what we have learned over the last year and a half. But that's not the end of it. We are also then validating project code or customer code with that new release, including our tests and the tests that the project eventually has provided. And only if all of that has passed, we're actually rolling out a release or a new build into production for customers. It's not meant to say that it's perfect and that there will never ever be a chance where things will not slip. But yeah, that's the outcome of 2.5, almost 3 years of massive investment in the whole CI/CD setup for AEM as a cloud service.
Thank you. So there's one question I actually was stating, it's like, will you support some search engine service, meaning like, will you host search engines as your kind of substantial part of the AEM platform for searching for pages and whatever? Do you plan to do something like that?
I'm not quite sure if I understand the question right, and if this is about some specific search engines that
let's say like
use.
Let's say like Solar or Elasticsearch, if you want to integrate them into search functionality in AEM.
Yeah, search is more okay. I was more thinking of Google or the like. All right. Well, at the end of the day, we are moving to a platform as a service, right? And the platform as it is today has index query and to a certain degree search capabilities. There are a lot of thoughts on how we expand on that, and in the context of taking the monolith that we had before and moving that on this platform where we are right now into a more federated architecture. So if you think about AEM before, like I said, one jar file that we made available for download. Today is, Ian, keep me honest, I think round about 30 plus services that a single AEM deployment makes when we operate it on the service. So that's a direction that we started and going to continue, and search is one of the areas where we definitely think it makes sense to look at things. But then obviously the devil is in the details, and I personally, I'm not sure at this point if you will or should even notice if we change something here behind the scenes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's critical. I mean, we have a search interface in JCR, and it exposes that. And our long-term, our aim is to make AEM cloud native and very scalable. So we are going to be implementing a different mechanism for search as we evolve, but behind that API. So your code won't have to change in order to use it, in order to get greater scale and greater scalability.
Thank you.
Maybe one more comment from a consumer perspective. I think this is one of the areas where the Cloud Manager deployment takes a lot of time currently. So I think the whole developer community, everyone will be grateful if that can be improved in the future.
I think so much we can say that is an area, including the indexing aspects of it, that is a very high focus for us. But it's not exactly the same as will you support some search engine, right? So throughput, performance, speed, velocity, that's all top of mind for us every day. But there's more to it than just search and index, and separate search service might be the answer to that. Maybe it's not. I read the question more as, will you in general support a search engine and even give us direct access to it? And that's, at least at this point, I'm not sure if that's something that we will do just like that.
Okay, so let's move to the next question. Does AEM as a cloud service support newer image formats like WebP, AVIF, and if so, how or is support planned?
At least I don't know the answer to that one. But I guess we can get back with answers for open questions anyway, right?
Yeah.
At least we did that last year.
Actually, out of our own interest in our company, we learned that WebP is supported by dynamic media from your tools. So if you book into dynamic media, you've got WebP format. I'm not sure about the others. But
some of the others may be supported through the asset compute service, and we'd need to go and ask an asset compute expert if they've got those adapters plugged in or if they're available. But I would suspect most of the mainstream formats will be available.
Okay, thank you. So probably
I wouldn't know either, to be honest, but I remember we support Photoshop actions now, if I'm not mistaken. So, and I would assume Photoshop supports everything that's modern, even though I don't know for sure.
Okay, so let's mark that as answered, but probably we can send off an answer later on to that one as well. So next question would be, are there any investments going towards enabling SSRs for SPAs running on AEM as a cloud service? Yeah, would be really cool to see SSRs that can be provisioned with a checkbox. Is there anything planned like that?
I wouldn't know, to be honest. Maybe it's a time of the day. I'm not sure what an SSR is. So
I think that's
maybe one of my peers know.
I think that's server-side rendering, and I think there are the intention is to be able to support server-side rendering, if I understand it correctly, and maybe even there are already customers doing server-side rendering using IO runtime. So they're running their server-side rendering inside IO runtime, which is can be integrated, is integrated as part of AEM Cloud Service. So it's not necessarily so much that AEM Cloud Service is supporting it, but has got special mechanisms to do it. It's that the whole Adobe IO infrastructure supports it.
Okay, thank you for that answer. So let's move to the next question. Are there any plans to backport the new features from AEM as a cloud service to AEM on-premise?
So I guess the answer is a definitive maybe. So I think, yeah, there are areas where this might make sense, but I don't have a fixed list. I don't think there is one. We will constantly look at what makes sense in the context of the overall ecosystem, and then decide from there.
Slightly going into the follow-on question on open source, I mean, all of the bits, all of the underlying parts of AEM Cloud Service are still Oak, Sling, Felix. And so when we make changes in those areas, we put them into Oak, Sling, and Felix. Now, we may not put absolutely all the code, but we'll certainly put into those open source projects. And also Adobe does have its own Adobe GitHub organization where you're going to start to see code appearing. There's code for Cloud Manager in there. There's IO runtime plugins relating to Cloud Manager and all those sort of things.
I already switched to that question now. Anyone
Sorry,
else? Yeah, no, it's fine. Anyone wants to jump into that question as well for the open source?
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is a definite yes, right, to at least to the first part. But other than that.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we don't have any plans to discontinue the projects that are open source already, the ones that we initiated, and the ones that we didn't initiate. Obviously, we it's not our decision, like Felix and the like. And I think, as you can see also in the Adobe GitHub channel and elsewhere, I mean, each of us who are with us for many years, all the way back to Day Software, you know that open source is part of our roots. We value it a lot. We have a lot of folks that are active in the AEM related open source projects, but many also way beyond. So there's no intent in changing that at this point. Which projects we might open source in future, obviously it's for every project we are having a discussion internally on what the implications are. It's not like you can just throw software out there and leave the world with it. So yeah, we can't really communicate here anything around that, but rest assured, you will see many of us be around in the open source community in the future.
Thanks for that answer. So let's move to the next one. Will there be a better, easier update process for local development environments? And before answering, I would want to jump in. I already put it in the chat, but we just continue for a couple of minutes inside the break time now to get as many questions answered as possible. So, but please answer the question now.
Yeah, so all I can say to that one is that we are evaluating different approaches on how to make the experience better, especially if you want to follow our frequent updates locally as well. And once we get to a solution which we think makes sense and satisfies our customers, we'll probably make it available. But no concrete date to say.
Okay, thank you. And at least from our list, there's one last question here. Are there any considerations for including useful and necessary functionalities of ACS Commons into the main product and to offer official support, for example, for the cloud service?
I don't have a definitive answer at this point for it. I mean, we are always looking at kind of what are our customers using and what are partners using and what's the ecosystem and what makes sense to include out of the box in the service for the benefit of everyone. ACS Commons has been part of that discussions in the past as well. So considerations, yes, and discussion around it. I wouldn't know from the top of my head if there are any concrete decisions on certain parts to be included. So if there's any concrete things that you feel like should really become parts of the core service, then feel free to let us know. And we can have a follow-up discussion separately to provide a little more details on our thinking and look into what would make sense.
Yeah, if you look at the Git history of ACS Commons, there has been a slight change in responsibility because ACS is no longer standing for Adobe Consulting Services, because actually no one from Adobe Consulting Services is any longer contributing to it. So it's just right now it's just a community effort. So I encourage everyone to just come up with pull requests. And also, yeah, a lot of, you can even become a committer. I'm a committer, although I'm not Adobe. So this really is some open source where you can contribute and fix stuff and contribute new stuff. And also we're actively working on making it way easier to actually do that. I did some investments on ACS AEM Commons for example, integrating GitHub Actions. So there's a better build pipeline right now available. Hopefully, it's easier for you to also build it locally with different JDK versions. But obviously, it's lack of time in the end. And yeah, everyone can help.
And I think in general, not really related to ACS Commons, we always have to be a little bit careful to just include the useful parts of any library that we want to include, and not all the baggage that comes with it, right? Because there might be things in a library that are not suited for cloud service, or are not in the way we want to things be done. So that's always a balance act, right? Finding the right balance between including something out of the box, but without including things that we don't want to have there. Again, general statement, not about ACS Commons.
Okay, and there was, after that last question, there was one very final last question coming in from Ruben. Are there any plans to make dispatcher-only deployments easier, faster in the cloud?
Yes, there are. I presented that briefly today in my talk. Probably
as Ruben is from the US, he might have been still
right
asleep at that time.
So what we will support by the end of this year are different, let's say, pipeline types via Cloud Manager. And one of these pipeline types is one exactly for what we call the web tier. And that includes dispatcher configuration. And with that pipeline, you can deploy or just update the dispatcher configurations within minutes. Let's put it that way.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Let's check. Stefan, shall we do one more, as we've got one more? It looks... How much time have we got left for the next talk? Yeah, one last, then we take that as the really final and last question, and then we move back to the lobby chat. So when it comes to useful parts on one of the sessions that happened today covered resource resolver, for instance. Will Adobe consider making a clean break with old APIs like externalizer anytime soon? AEM 7.0 seems like a pipe dream at this moment.
Okay, I guess we could give a very long answer to that one. The first thing is, even if we change major versions on the product, that doesn't mean these are incompatible changes, right? If you compare AEM 5 and at AEM 6, there are significant changes, but still most of the code for AEM 5 works on AEM 6. So with a 7, that would be in a similar vein. And the other thing is, we don't want to break any customer, right? That's our rule number one when it comes to customers. We might introduce here and there over time new APIs as a replacement, and then use the deprecation mechanism that Dominic presented earlier on to phase out the old APIs. But we simply can't do breaking changes, right, with our daily updates of AEM in the cloud service. That's a very short answer, but I tried to get it down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think the dynamics are changing, right? I mean, something like a major version change to me feels like more this is in the yearly release cycle. Now, if you release once a month, or maybe even more often than that, and you have very small incremental changes, then suddenly having something like such a big, massive change, it doesn't really fit into that model anymore. And I think API versions is something that, I mean, in our outside communication, maybe not, but at least internally in the engineering team, we always looked at API versions separate from the actual product versions.
So one doesn't exclude the other. If we see value in revamping or changing an API, to your point, Carsten, backwards compatibility always a major aspect for us to consider. But we might offer two variants side by side, and then over time gradually shift people, and whoever adopt, as soon as you adopt, you can get the additional incremental value. But that doesn't mean we will suddenly call it AEM 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 because of that.
Okay, then thank you all for your answers. Thank you for your time being here. And I think a lot of questions have been answered. We used a lot of time, even extra time on it, and thank you for that as well. And probably we see one or the other again in later talks and other sessions and rounds. But thank you, first of all, for this session and for your time here. See you all then in the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great day.
Thank
everyone.
you. Goodbye.
Have a nice
Goodbye.
day. Bye-bye.
Bye.